PCN tours the Keystone State, taking you inside Pennsylvania's factories, museums, and historical sites.
Hi, I'm Ken Smith, president of Ken Smith Bases, PERKASIE, Pennsylvania. Today we're going to take a tour through our factory. I'm going to show you how we make our electric bases. From the lumber yard on up to finished product, we're going to take a tour of several operations that have been set aside today to give you a good idea of what we do. What you're seeing here is a storage room of parts that we've manufactured in the building. This lumber is stored at a different level downstairs, which is like a basement level. It's half submerged, half above, so it's a little bit more damp than the upstairs temperature. Once we manufacture the part in a semi-finished form, we want to stock it upstairs in the same level where it's going to be manufactured. This way there won't be that much movement until the time we use it. Some pieces might sit here for a week, a month, or even a year or two. We have some bodies, let me see where they are. Over here, this is lacewood, which is from Brazil right now. It was originally first popularized out of Australia. This speckled tweed, orangish brown wood is very, very attractive, but not that well known. We use it on special models only, and we're proud to have it. This wood here was cut about a year ago. Over here we have some western maple that we've had in the building over 5 or 6 years. Actuality, we just moved to this building a year ago, but our other building down the street is where we received it, so correction on that one. But this wood came in the early 90s and was cut into blocks and later on cut into body parts and then, shaped, waiting for usage and manufacturing. So these parts here might get used in a couple of months or they might sit a couple of years depending on when we need this exact species of wood. Over here you see a body already finished, waiting for just the last few machining operations, and it'll be down to handwork. We'll see in the other room how these get put together. You have over here the same species of wood, which is maple, also called curly maple, tiger maple, flame maple. There's all different names for the same wood. And the softer maple species, which we use mainly, comes from the red maple tree. If you have a house with landscaping, you may have a maple tree around there. The other maple is the sugar maple. We use that mostly in our necks, but on occasion we have a nicely flamed piece. We'll use that in the body too. For commercial purposes of simplicity and understanding, we've lately called all of our curly maple tiger maple for the tiger stripes it has in it. And in some lumber places in purchasing, they may call it tiger maple, they may call it curly maple. So we just use the commercial term tiger. Over here, we have regular solid black walnuts, which grows all over Pennsylvania and New York, and is treasured for its very nice dark color. I'm going to spray a little bit of naphtha, quick drying naphtha on this body. Show you the difference it's going to be from this raw state to something that has a finish on there. That's about what it'll look like when it's done. It might be a hair darker when the oils mix in with it. But we spray these every time we go to put them together because we have to match up another piece of walnut from this area over here for the headstock. So we'll fan through these pieces that we cut up from cut-off scraps, and we'll look for one also sprayed to match the same type of grain and the same basic color pattern. So before we spend too much time here, why don't we go downstairs. We're going to see this lumber yard that we have here in-house of all these different exotic woods in their raw form, so raw that the bark is still on them. Let's go. Well, we're downstairs now in the lumber area, and what you're looking at is a stack of black walnuts that still has some of its bark on it. And there's some maple on the bottom. And what this stuff is some trees that were cut up that had some figured patterns in there. And the best way to preserve the figure, so the harder, denser areas of the figured section don't crack, is to leave it untouched, just wax it and stack it and let it dry naturally. This area right here where I'm showing you has these lines going across the grain. Rather than parallel, it's horizontal. And that's probably some area of pressure where a branch was coming out. There could have been another part of the tree over here, and this is the bark in between the crotch. There's some sap over here. So it's really hard to tell how these trees were. But we do know these areas of condensed, tight grain will crack more than will the regular areas, straight grain and regular drying. So what we do is ask the supplier to deliver the trees wet to us, usually within 2 or 3 days from being cut. Sometimes the following day they're delivered. And we immediately wax the areas and we stack them with little stickers here to let the air dry through. And I really don't care how many years it takes for it to dry because we have a good stock of it anyway. So if this stuff is ready 5 or 10 years from now, we're already set for that much time. Over here in the background, you'll see some other stacks of wood. This is maple. You can shoot this at a distance. The rear stack there is bodywood mostly that we're going to use sometime in the future. The stack right next to me, some of it might be used by us, some might be sold off of furniture. We also sell wood to furniture companies or furniture builders because the way we buy is we buy everything that the supplier will yield that looks like it might meet our grade. But we take the chance that if it doesn't, we'll sell it to somebody who can use it. This way, we don't have to pay high prices for sorting and things like that, of special grades, of figure or patterns or whatever. So we say anything that meets that criteria, you send it here and we'll pick it out. Over here is a couple of stacks with this red paint on it. This is neck stock. These woods will be cut into strips, glued up into necks of bolt-on and neck through body, depending on the length. The thickness will determine what part it's used for. The thinner stuff is usually centers. The thicker stuff is usually the outside pieces. And we have some more of this wood in the other part of the building. We just recently completed some construction around here, so a lot of things got moved around. It's a little bit of a mess, so please excuse the mess while we do our construction. We're putting a new heating system in. And one of the advantages of the new heating system is we'll be able to burn all the scrap wood that we have. So every time we cut around the guitar, there's a cut-off piece. We cut the ends off that has little cracks, or the strips from the neck. All those pieces will be chopped up and put into little boxes and thrown into the wood boiler later. So let's take a walk over here. We're going to show you what we do with some of the maple that comes in when it is wet. This is some maple that recently arrived about 2 weeks ago. And we immediately cut it into usable parts and wax the ends. Sometimes they're long enough for a match body pair. We don't yet trim the width. We're not sure which section we're going to use yet. We'll let it dry out first. And some cut-off pieces might be cut as single bodies. Maybe they'll be book matched. This narrow piece might be the center of a body. And they're marked. HB means heel block. You know. If you've read a doctor's prescription, it's probably similar to my handwriting. Over here is a piece of thinner stock of maple that we normally use for body tops. And this is how it came, except for the length that was cut. There's some wax here under the table. We recently waxed this last week. I left it here for the tour. The ends are waxed and a little sealer coat around the edge. The bark is still on here, but I haven't yet trimmed it. So why don't we take a minute and we'll see what we're going to do here. Over here is the body template for a book match. That's the left and right half of the set. So we're going to cut this right in half and split it open. I'm not going to split it now, but I am going to trim the piece so we don't have to dry a piece that's like about 9 inches wide. We're just going to take about 6 inches of it. So these pieces here have a little tiny mark right here that shows where they line up, slightly offset. So if you fold these two pieces together, it looks like this, kind of a little bit of a hump. But these might slip while I'm holding them. So we've made a template that has these two pieces matched already. So we'll put this aside. You lay this template here, allowing enough extra room for movement, cracking or anything over the time while it's drying, and lay that out. And that shows me this is where the body will be when we're done. Nice little tiger pattern in here. Then we'll take a template that's slightly oversized that, lay it up along here, get a rough edge, just cut it right here, draw a little line with a crayon, and this is all we need to save. This piece here we can't use. Between the stain coming in here and the bark, this is basically just going to be some firewood, so maybe about 10 minutes of heat over the winter. So I'm going to put my safety goggles on. I'll cut this for you. This room down here is also a rough machining area. You'll note we have a large planer here, and we have a radial arm saw over there that we're using as a table. Also have a fine air dust collector and a regular exhaust fan over there. So sometimes there's up to 2 people working here milling this lumber, preparing it for parts to be stored for long-term or short-term storage. This is our bandsaw we use only for rough cutting. But we have made about 1,000 necks on this saw in the old shop. Now when I'm cutting this, it's got a very dull, low-pitched sound because the wood is actually wet. Well, I guess I did okay. My fingers are still attached to my hand. This is a moisture meter. Many ways to tell the moisture. Usually going into the wood is better than the surface, but to give you an example, the surface of this reads about 10, almost 12, so it's probably 11%. It's going almost to 10, a little more than 10%. But if I go to the inside where I just cut, that would be the same as if we drilled holes into it. It's hitting 12%. So that's how we test the wood. Usually we'll cut ends off, and we'll see what they are, but we have quite a bit of stock down here. Some species between 5 and 10 years, maybe even more. So usually the wood will take about 1 year per inch to dry. For good stabilization, 5 years per inch is favored. Most pieces won't last that long, you know, in a regular production shop, but we like to go with that rule if we can. Okay. Here's some other black walnut, cut and stickered. This stuff over here is going to dry for a while, but right next to it is more black walnut. This stuff was dried in 1995 through 1998. It was first cut and then stickered outdoors, and about at 5,000 feet, about 1,000 to 2,000 feet per year was put in a hot box in a solar kiln and dried up. By the time the last batch of that wood was dried, it didn't take quite so long, but this wood is very, very stable and very dry. And these woods will be used for various parts from core stock to tops, depending on the quality of the wood. Okay, we're up here in the shop, and we're going to show you some of the operations, as I mentioned before. We can't do everything in succession because it would take too long. We'd be here for weeks and weeks. But we set aside a few operations to give you a taste of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So Mike here is going to glue these feature stripes on to the body wings. This will give it a nice contrast when it glues to the maple in the center of the neck. So go ahead, Mike, why don't you show us what you're doing. You got the glue here. Let's spread the glue out. Okay. Get that glue nice and even. Time to make the sauce. Kids, don't try this at home.
Make sure they're all the same way.
Yeah, now these bodies were previously squared up by hand. Even though we have the joiner and everything, we're going to take these surfaces and measure them with a square and a straight edge. Make sure they're perfectly squared. So when they glue up, you don't see any daylight coming through. So go ahead and just go ahead and do it. Some of the operations are kind of boring to watch, but when they're completed and people see an end view of them, they say, wow, how'd you do that? If you can just pull the camera over there, you'll see that body and the neck joined together, which is the same species he's gluing. Come over here and point it out while he's getting that ready. Keep going. This stripe running right down here is glued to this body wing here. And if we didn't have that, you'd have this wood touching here. Now, if this were maple, and this is going to be maple against maple, kind of boring. So we always put a nice feature stripe in there. Okay, ready to spread the glue out?
Yep.
Okay. Put a little strip of glue down there. A little tiny paint roller or glue roller, whatever you want to call it. Spread it out. It's a nice tacky bead. Never use too much glue, because the glue sets up kind of quick. You might have some pockets in there, and it won't bond together too well. These two pieces he's gluing in was originally 1 inch thick and about that long. And we were cut in half and book matched. See this little line in here? It's like a V. We drew that line before we split it so we can line them up again. So even the pieces that we put in the center of the body were matched pieces at one time. What he's doing now, he's lining up the body wings and the features. He's just going to feel it on the bottom to make sure they just protrude slightly. This way that'll come out in sanding. The pieces that stick out on the top we cut off on the saw. Check that in one more time. A little bit low there. Now, some operations you can use clamping. But these have to be glued up oversized because you cannot be under. This is kind of an operation where you just sort of feel by hand.
Enough.
And put the third clamp on from the top. It doesn't buckle. And these body pieces are slightly oversized anyway, so there will be some sanding to these pieces as well.
Good, that's good.
Okay, got tightened up? Good. Okay, let's go to the next feature over here. Here we have Buzz. Buzz is a body wing here. I previously cut downstairs those blocks I just mentioned that were being cut into bodies. And here is the original layout I made. There's only about a ½ inch per side, approximately, give or take. It's an estimate. He's going to take the side that's got the most cup. It's the way the tree grows. And normally the nicest figure is on the top. And normally the nicest figure is on the outside of the tree. You see the grain lines are running here in a circle, which designates the tree was this way. And the bottom here is the side. He's got this marked, so when we sand it down, we can tell when it takes the marks out. Sometimes you can't tell. She's going to join this piece, flatten it, then he'll thickness it, and eventually relay them out to about where I had them, and cut them. This is the other half of the body right here. Okay, Buzz, why don't you fire it up, and let's hear this machine roar. Now this will be the final edge for glue up until it's time to glue it up, at which time it'll again be kissed on the joiner just lightly and then hand sanded level just like those other body wings were. This will also be thicknessed on the planer, and then on the thickness sander, which is this machine right here, which has like a conveyor belt. It's like a big sander, but it's also like a planer, called a abrasive planer. And this will sand down the bodies to the right thickness that we want, leave it slightly oversized for the time we need it. It also moves in increments of just a couple thousandths of an inch, so we can control the tolerance very closely. And then it'll be cut out into a piece like we showed you in the other room that was ready for glue up. Okay, let's see what Todd has going on over here. Thank you, Buzz. Okay, Todd's going to cut out one of these body wings, but this is a three-piece body. This has walnut in the center, and this is a quilted maple, top and back, and it has a Murata feature already glued on. It's all trimmed up. It's all flat. Now we're going to cut this out here on the bandsaw. Then we'll profile them after. For now, we're going to cut the bandsaw. Go ahead, Todd. Fire up the bandsaw. This is a hand operation only a skilled person can do. Okay, we always do the 10-finger check. So you guys fingers?
All there.
All there. Okay, thank you very much, Todd.
Sure.
Good job. Now Mike is going to put this on a jig. Actually, he has another one already ready. How about that? Okay. This is a vacuum jig. Put an air hose on here, sucks it on. You probably couldn't pry it off with a crowbar. Right now I lifted this up, that came right off. Has all these little tracks here for the air to go through. Put it on here. Once you set that up, put the air on. We'll show the people how tight that is. The air. Okay. These are the bodies just out of the router. Nice smooth edge. No bandsaw marks. These will be ready for glue up to a neck right now. I think we have one ready for glue up. Is that correct, Todd?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you're going to show us the sanding of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, Todd is going to demonstrate how we hand sand the body wings to as fine as perfection as we can detect with the best tools. And then we're going to go to one that's already been prepared and glue that one up. These are done by hand planes with very fine sandpaper attached. Use a square and straight edge to match them up. Any light at all detected showing through means it has to be leveled again.
All right, that looks pretty good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Let's go look at a pair that's already been glued up. Is this the ones you're gluing up?
No, but I wanted to show you the
Okay.
dowels.
Okay, this is a pair that's already glued up. They've already been squared up, and we filled these little dowels in here. Draw it out with a small 1/8" dowel and a matching hole on the neck part so it doesn't slip when it glues up. And this is, you know, just regular maple dowels. Those will machine right out. Okay, let's go over to the operation and see what we got here. Okay, we're back here at the table with Todd in the glue-up area. A set of body wings, already been matched up. The dowels pop to the other side. These dowels don't get glued in, they just get glued in when they're glued. This will help line it all up. And this will be a body with zebra wood. It's an African species with a walnut core and maple veneers. And by the way, we make the maple veneer here. We don't buy commercial veneer. We take 1-inch lumber that doesn't have any figure or that's not good enough grade for a top, and we slice it up 4 ways and make our own 4-piece matched veneer set for each body that we make. So I was going to glue it up right now. Basically the same application as before. You know, we roll the glue on very lightly, but enough to glue, but not too much to squeeze out and cause a problem. These things coming inside the clamps are called gluing cauls. That's so the clamps don't scratch the wood. And they're a reverse image of the shape of the bodies. On occasion, we've had actual bodies that cutouts used as the cauls. This will stop the wings from slipping. Now that we're at like almost a final thickness, we have to be real careful about slippage. See just a little bit of glue squeezing out, which is good. It means we had glue in there to hold it together. Check the back in a minute. Now we'll ensure that the body is square to the neck. Use a little straight edge there. This clamp will hold the little wings coming up here, right to the neck. These pieces mostly get machined out in shaping, but we still want to glue them on there pretty good. Since the glue sets so fast and we don't use a whole lot of it, as soon as the guitar is lined up with the body, we can pull those clamps off. Let me see the back. Show the back view. Okay. Just a hair bead of glue you can see coming out right here and here. Okay. And if we can see the front for 1 second, I want to point out something we're going to go to next. These little lines here is a strip of veneer glued in on top of a bar of graphite. This model has graphite inlaid. Some do, some don't that we make. And we put a little strip of graphite, a little strip of veneer on top of the graphite, so when we glue the fingerboard to it, the glue of the fingerboard does not have to stick to the glue of the graphite, because glue generally doesn't stick to glue. Thank you.
Sure.
Now this is called a duplicarver. This is not any kind of fancy CNC. It's a regular old-fashioned tracing machine where this has already been set up to the right height. This is a handmade blank made of a hard maple. And then we lacquer it to preserve it. And this little thing is going to travel around here and trace the height that we need for this body here. We don't want to touch the neck too much. That's pretty much about where we want it, except for hand carving. We're going to take this shoulder down right around here and shape it and just leave the router marks. Later on, all those marks will be taken out in the hand carving. Now, if we do this by hand with chisels and hammers and stuff like that, they may vary in size from guitar to guitar. But we have this operation here to make sure that each one is pretty close to one another. So when we fire this up, I'm going to step back so the router does not kill the microphone. Okay, now this is ready for hand carving. The fingerboard was already glued on. Okay, you can see the cut of the pickup. This machine is called a pin router. It rotates on a pin here. It's about a 1/2-inch pin. And this will follow this all the way around here, and it will cut from the top. So these are very precision-made patterns, even though they look kind of homemade. They are homemade, but they're very accurate. And we get the job done very well with them. Okay, this is also a pin router, but it's set up for the other operation. It's good sometimes to have more than one machine of the same type to do other operations. This is going to come in here and put a little round over here. It's a freehand operation. There's no really jig for it. You'll know where to stop, and we'll just go ahead and do it. as you can see, this is a little bit of a messy job. We do have cleanup to do every day, and that's why we have a lot of brooms. We also have some fine air dust collectors in this room as well. All the rooms have them, and we have dust collection for the big chips. But we turn them off for the tour so I wouldn't be drowned out. Let's go into the next room, and we'll see where the bodies and necks go from here. Okay, well, now we're back in the carving area. This is where all the bodies that are worked on are carved by hand and final sanding. These are the routes. They've been sanded on the edges as well with a dull roller. And one operation you didn't see this cut here and this pocket cut out, which we did on the other machines as well. And this area here, we're going to see how these things get blended in and this body gets completed, and even though the step where it gets oiled and polished up. As I mentioned before, we can't stay here to the start or finish of one instrument, so we're going to show different stages of different instruments so we can get an idea of how they're all done. These instruments over here are the neck through bodies, the one that Todd was doing the carving on. As you can see, it's all been carved in the back. The edges have been sanded out. Fingerboard is here. A little bit of glue showing. This will all get hand carved to a perfectly smooth instrument, ready for oiling. Okay, let's go over here to Alan. Alan's going to blend in this little area. I think you can get a better shot from this side. He's already taken down this corner here. He'll take down this corner, just blend it in here with a rasp. Good, Alan. As you can see, we have a pencil line drawn over here. It's slowly being cut away. If we would have cut this on a machine with a router type bit like the duplicarver, we'd have a lot of little circles here. It'd take even more time to do. So the easiest way for these little tiny areas here is just by hand. Experienced carver will take it out in just a few minutes. Let's go on to the next stage over here. What Mark is doing here is final fitting the bolt-on neck to the body pocket. Again, we use these hand planes. This is made of laminated hardwood, very flat with fine sandpaper. We check everything with squares and straight edges. And little by little, he goes back and forth till it fits like a glove. A little bit of allowance is accepted for the swelling of the wood after it gets oiled. Corners are rounded over by hand. These are operations that a machine can only go so far, but only the hands that make it what it is. Okay, when he gets that fit within tolerance, we're going to turn it over. And we use a little punch to punch the holes with a drill. A little tiny marking, and we'll go to the drill press and drill them, but we're probably not going to show that because we're going to be short on time. Just give you an idea how we mark them. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, he had a struggle to get that neck out because it's so tightly fit, can't really get it out. You have time to drill that? Yes. Oh, okay. The stopper's already set. Okay. Because we use exotic woods on all of our instruments, as I mentioned, the matching headstocks, each neck is made to match a particular body. They have numbers in the pockets as they're manufactured, as well as in the bodies. So each neck is fit individually. So if this is 6-20 in production, we have 6-21, the same model, the necks may not be interchangeable. because each one is made one by one, and they're slightly different from base to base, giving it that personal quality. Final fitting of the neck. It's all done with hand scrapers. He's almost done with this one. Tools used are sanding block, brass, files, scraper. We do it the old-fashioned way, if I can quote a cliche. Except for the hairstyles. That's all new. Now, if you're wondering, this is not a job for the beginner. Most of the people you see here have been working in this company for several years and started at a very basic level, learning what we want. Even though they were experienced in their field before, we still have to train them to where we want them. Okay. It's a brass nut. It's a blank. Gives us an idea how much room we have, because you may have to cut this or file this a little bit more to make it fit. But it looks pretty good now, huh? Okay. We'll go back to Alan. Alan's got something for us to see. Okay. Alan's got the little fret press here. Now we make neck through body and bolt on instruments. As you can see, we have a little arbor to press them in. On the neck throughs, on the higher frets, and even some of the higher frets in these, we have to hand hammer them in with a dead blow hammer. But most of the ones on the earlier positions, we can press them in nice and even. As I mentioned before, we can't show a whole instrument from start to finish, so we have people jockeying back and forth between operations we set up the day before, so we can show you quite a few things. He's just finally leveling the frets. Check them with a straight edge, even though the neck was checked with a straight edge, and then pressed in. We're going to go for that final point. We use a light to see through. Accurate straight edge to go underneath. Anything that's showing up, we have to level everything to meet it. If you can get the camera at an angle here, you can see what he's looking for. He's looking for light showing through on any of the frets touching the straight edge. If it shows through, it means we have more work to do. If it doesn't show through, it means we're done for the moment. As you saw the frets being pressed in, they stick out quite a bit, and then they're cut, clipped at each fret. What he's doing now is going to do the slide bevel here and just put a little radius on them. Okay, we're going to move on. This can take some time. Take a few more seconds of this. All the instruments we make have 24 frets, so he's got to do that 48 times for each instrument, 24 per side. Okay, we have a body here Dennis finished a few minutes ago, and we held it for the camera. So he put down his neck. He's going to show us how we oil them. This is a piece of maple. As you see, the oil goes on there, all that figure, and flames pop out.
A little Cindy Crawford spot there.
Yeah. See what the back looks like on that one. Get the size in a minute. All those tiger stripes jumping right at you. Our tigers don't bite, they're all tame. Okay. See that curl on the edge. People like to look at the grain comes parallel here, all these Nice, bright, strong tiger stripes jumping out at you. Okay. Very nice. So this is an instrument that was just oiled for the first time, first coat of oil. As they get oiled more and more every day, they even get more beautiful by the minute. Dan has one over here. Let's go see what Dan has. Dan has one that has, how many coats does this one have on it?
Probably has about 5.
Okay, so we're about halfway through the oil process. Now this is a maple and walnut combination. Walnut top and back. Book match, the same piece split in half. Has maple in the center, bubinga feature stripes like the neck-through body model has. So we make the same style in both neck-through and bolt-on. You can see the nice tiger stripes on the edges here. Both sides. Really fine tiger stripes here. We'd like to put the nicer tiger in the areas we're going to see it the most. Dan's going to put a coat of oil on here. We'll see what that one looks like wet. Shines right up. Although they look very shiny when you first put the oil on, it will dull down a little bit. Only the varnish and the wax will bring that back up in the end. Using very fine, I think 600 sandpaper to oil sand in the oil. What happens in between coats is the grain rises a little bit as it gets wet, and we knock it right back down with the sandpaper. Just doing one surface as a demonstration for now. Nice, fine, matte glow finish. It still gets about 4 or 5 coats more before it gets its varnishing, which is its top coats. So we'll put this body aside for now. And this is the varnish base here. This base here has had all the oil it's going to take. It's pretty much well sealed, and it's getting varnished. This is a paste type varnish that we put in there. Dan's going to take the instrument and put a coat of varnish on there. Again, this will be varnished quite a few times until it's ready for rub out. Now the varnish is quite a bit tackier and dries harder than does the oil itself. So we put a very, very fine coat on it. This room here is where the oil instrument is dry. Drying room. Mostly the bolt-ons dry in this room. The neck-throughs go on the other side. Today we have mostly maple here being finished up. Maple's our most popular wood. It's the light wood that has the nicer, darker stripes going through it, so it's the most popular in our industry. It's considered the prettiest wood. So this neck and body is going to be married together for the rest of its life right now. Of course, we don't do a formal ceremony, it's just a couple of screws. These washers he's putting in there do not come from a hardware store. This is custom made for us by a machinist, and then a black anodized finish put on there. One point of interest to anybody who has any knowledge of finishing is we do not use a buffing wheel. The kind of material we use is a catalyzed lacquer. It's not a very thick material, but it's very strong. So it's always hand rubbed with all the compounds by hand. So Rachel has a body here she's doing, headstock. This is a rare piece of some type of oxidized or fungus colored black charcoal redwood. We've never seen anything like this before. Nobody we've spoken to has seen this, and this was used on our 20th anniversary model. We only made about half a dozen of these, and this is one of the last ones. And this is just the polish used on the headstock. And there's one other one here we'll show them. This is also a redwood. It has like a bird's eye type of figure, front and back. See the other side there, the other side of the redwood? Little bird's eye here with a little bit of flame shooting through. Also very rare as far as the figure of woods go. Not the normal redwood you would normally find on your deck. Okay, thank you. Okay, these neck throughs are hand carved, and Matt has 3 different versions, 3 different stages rather, of the neck through process. Here's one that's come out. This is the last one we're going to make in the charcoal. We'll roll out of this charcoal. This is right out of the room, the way Todd was dupli-carving it. Ready for hand carving. See the what's that? The glue line? Okay, you already cleaned up the glue a little bit. This area is not carved yet. He's getting ready to carve. And it's at his primary stage for carving. Okay, he's going to glue in the S. This is a mother of pearl S logo that goes on all of our bases. Makes a little color to match the headstock. So in case of any gaps or whatever, it blends in well, but the fit is pretty good. Goes in like a paste. Okay, and that is just brought up just to the surface. Then it'll dry and it'll all get sanded off later. Okay, we're in the setup room now with John. John does all the setup here. And what he's doing is he's attaching the wires to the pickup. He's already previously put the solder on the wire. It's called tinning. And now we're going to install the pickup and then install the circuit. These wires are quite short, and you're working in a small, tight area. Clip the ends off. Keep the fingers on. We always do a finger check with tools here. Okay. Now, some companies put a little foam under there for the movement up and down. Some people put a spring in there. We put the foam and the spring. I like it to be filled up nicely so it doesn't make any noise, and the foam in there to help the springs work. These are printed circuit boards manufactured by one of our suppliers. The switches were previously installed on this particular type of wiring, which has a series parallel wiring, which is technical talk. The switches are pre-wired, and we just attach the wires to the pickup. So after John tightens this up, we're going to put this guitar aside, and we'll go another operation, which is the nut. All our nuts are machined out of brass and then hand fitted right here. Every nut has to be fitted to each guitar. By the way, this really pretty wood here, it's called quilted maple. I don't know if we showed any of that stuff downstairs. We had several piles of it, but it's one of the most treasured woods in the guitar field. Beautiful quilted cloud bubble pattern. Thanks. The gluing in, we just use a little bit of a white glue, just a touch. The nut should never be cemented in, only lightly glued in to hold it from the string pressure. From time to time, when the instruments get repaired, the nut has to be moved out, taken away, and if you have to break a strong glue bond, you could chip the wood around it. Okay, there we go. Now that'll sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll string it up. But we're going to skip that for today, because we sort of are running out of time. And we're going to show you again some finished instruments, and we're going to wrap it up. Well, anyway, that's the end of our tour for today. I'm not going to bore you with any more of my playing. I've been retired for several years now. Right here, this is my workbench. I actually do work here. I put the truss rod cap in, put the serial number on, the back plate, stamp the serial number over here, play each instrument, case it up, and ship it out to whoever it's going to. If you want any more information about Ken Smith Basses or its products, we do have a catalog available. We also invite people to take tours if you're in the area, or you can call up for any specific questions. We also do have a website as well, where there's a whole factory tour with some other shots on there. So come and visit. Thank you very much.